Well, at Sonoma State, I think what stands out to me is that you also came from SRJC, and the SRJC Mecha SSU Mecha collaboration that has been going on. I guess I'm curious, what was that like in in that time? Because I
Yeah.
definitely had some of that
Well,
experience.
yeah. I mean, I think when we were in Mecha, when I got involved in Mecha at the JC, it was very apolitical. I mean, we were just having parties. I
Okay.
remember we were just having a party for Dia de Muertos and whatnot, and then we started kind of getting a little bit more. I think one of the only actions that I guess I remember that really happened at Sonoma State, the JC, that I think was really somewhat political, is actually taking grapes out of the cafeteria. You know,
Mm.
but after that, it was just kind of partying it up, and even through the protests of 187, um, there was a huge contingent. I mean, it was a big group, but a lot of those were on their way out. A lot of those folks
Mm.
were on their way out, um, and there was a big group that was really apolitical.
Mm.
They were not into much. Um, there was another, but then there was another group that was really political,
Mm-hmm.
and just really involved. And that group eventually took over student government.
Mm.
The president at one point, I think maybe my first year at the JC there, the president was a machista. The vice president of student government was a machista.
Wow.
A few of the senators were machistas,
That's what's up.
and a bunch of and so they were kind of. But then I remember Geronimo got impeached, or
Oh,
actually no, he didn't get impeached.
dang.
Like something happened, like where he did something. This guy was not. He was just doing what I can't remember what it was. It was something just pathetic. It was um, um, just some red tape or whatnot that happened, and I think he didn't get impeached by one vote. And but then he didn't get impeached. But then right after the day after he resigned, he's like, nah, I don't need this in my life, and
Mm.
that was it. And so I think a lot of that involvement in student government, that shift,
Mm.
took away from them being machistas,
Mm.
Mm.
right? And
Mhm.
so the person that really got me into Mecha was Maria Orozco, who was a Geyserville High School alum, went to UC Davis.
Mm.
So Maria Orozco said, "You guys don't even have voting rights," and I'm like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Well, do you know that there's other mechas in other places?" And I'm like, "Okay." So I ended up going because she was living in Cloverdale.
Uh huh.
So we ended up going to UC Davis
Oh,
Mm.
nice.
to a mecha meeting over there,
Mm.
Nice.
and then I started getting to know other mechistas and whatnot. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
"Yeah, this is cool."
Mm.
Nice.
So you start seeing all the other people that are kind
Yeah.
of talking in a certain way, and then you come back to the JC and they were like, "What?" Like they didn't want a part of that because it was too
Uh,
much. It's like
mm.
going to meetings, but they were organized around stuff. And I remember going and I think at one point protesting against like the bunch of machines that came back and came down and organized against was other people organizing as well, but the 150th anniversary of California, the
Mm.
California
Okay.
Revolt,
Mm.
the Bear
Ah,
Flag Revolt.
oh,
It
I
was
think you
crazy.
told me this story.
Yeah, Pete Wilson came and spoke, and
Mm.
like
Nice.
somebody brought out a drum, and they started drumming, and there were like sheriffs all the way around. So it's like I was like, damn, this is cool. Like I want more
Yeah.
of this,
Mm.
Nice.
And so it started politicizing me definitely, the whole, and so I to the JC I kind of um, started doing a lot of try to get involved as much as possible, but I was doing more with other chapters,
Interesting.
Mhm.
Mm.
not necessarily with Sonoma
Wicked.
State, because it was until um, this other group kind of got until I graduated
Mm.
from the JC
Mm.
and went to Sonoma State.
And then
Then we started
who
putting
you build around there?
Yeah.
then we started putting some pressure on the JC to kind of keep it going.
Interesting.
That's when
Yeah.
Omar Medina and then some other folks
Okay.
started kind of coming into
Mm.
the JC.
And then who's around you at Sonoma State at this
um,
point?
Maricela Hurtado, Maria Espinosa, Moises. That's where I met Moises.
Oh, nice.
Moises kind of started, we all started hanging out.
Did you get
And
voting rights?
yeah, we did.
In the Altas Califas
No, we
Norte?
actually hosted. I think we even hosted did we host a national? I think we
Oh,
might have hosted a state conference. I think.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, no. I remember that there's a photo of me and you on top of a truck, like telling people what's up. There was
This is that. I think I was at the day labor center at that point.
I don't know, but there was, I know that there was a, so there was a, or maybe I was maybe after, because
Yeah.
I know that
Yeah, yeah.
that not Shan, Koyoshauki, when we started doing danza, we had the first ceremony at Sonoma State for Koyoshauki,
Oh, nice.
and there was a statewide conference going at the same time,
Mhm.
so all the students came over as well.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah. So this is the point where anyone else around you at Sonoma when you're coming into Mecha.
when I came into Mecha, that's where I met Mari and all them,
Uh-huh.
and so they were kind of questioning, kind of like where folks at,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember Maricela saying that somebody from one of the fraternities kind of came over, was like, we're gonna squash that, it doesn't belong here or whatever, and kind of starting that rift and whatnot, but there was that, and then maybe a year after you came along.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
That's kind of like
maybe
where
one-
we coincide. I came to like the planning meeting right before the Raza Youth Conference of like
Yeah.
2000 maybe.
Yeah.
2000.
Did you meet Maricela?
I can't recall.
Yeah, so then it was probably like a year after.
But-
'Cause they left a year after that.
And what I mean, this speaks to the idea of like succession, because like you all, for me, I was like a fucking little hippie boy, but whatever, I'm still a hippie, but I still, like I was still kind of like, what's going on, this seems cool. But one, the Raza Youth Conference was happening right then, so I got plugged in all in a bunch of like young high school students. They had like the female caucuses, they had the male caucuses, and they're talking about imperialism and machismo in the household and like feminismo, and like for me, I was just like, what is this? I've never seen something like this. And high school students are engaged in small circles around this, so it's really beautiful. But also, like, I think you all, to some extent, you knew you were going to be starting to head out soon, and you were thinking of like succession.
Yeah.
And honestly, like for me, it might have been you were recruiting, it might have been you were thinking like, okay, who's going to carry this on? But all of you created like a warm space for me, where like I heard so many young Latinos and other campuses that like, I tried to go to a Metro meeting, but they were kind of assholes. So like I just bounced and I never got involved again. And I maybe they became even more apolitical because they didn't feel welcomed, and I felt welcomed, and like that for me ends up changing the trajectory of who I am.
Yeah, no, I think we definitely, it was a rough one, maybe first, second year, where we had to kind of restart everything.
Yeah.
And then there was a few, can't remember, Angelica and all them, Mariana and all them.
Susie
They
Blue.
were just, they were just kind of wild, and so they were just fun, and
they're badasses.
Yeah, and they were, and I think they all became professionals and like doctorates.
Still doing it. They're all
doctorates
still
and
doing
whatnot.
it.
And so I remember there was that picture. that people were still kind of sending out when I think when you graduated. Yeah, when you graduated.
Yeah.
So it was that crew. I think was like that second that
amazing.
third year. I was definitely on my way. I think I might have been starting my teaching credential program or something like that. But so I think there was that transitional year that was cool. I mean, it was fun, but also we did see a lot of new energy coming in.
But you all weren't just like, we're out and it's gonna like, and that's an interesting thing too. I think generationally, like with you, with me, and like this generation, like we're all in our 40s now. But also, I think there was an idea that like, one, if we have privilege, if we're at the university, we're gonna try to figure out how to give back. Two, we want to create spaces where you had mentored, somebody was mentoring you, you started mentoring others. There was this concept just around like, we have a duty. There was a semblance of like duty with why we were doing anything. You know.
I remember. So I think I've thought about this a lot, and so I think it definitely. I'm very critical. Especially of young folks, of the young energy now, and that's hella controversial right now, and I could be probably canceled because of this. But
Let me
but I
stop the
no.
recording.
But I think there was there is that there was that notion. It was in Minicore. It was in Mecha. that you gave back because other folks gave a lot to so you could actually
Yeah.
be in the university. Like we knew that people made us understand that somebody had made the sacrifice, whether it be your parents or it be a Nugent or somebody else before Nugent leaving that intercultural center where we never got out of. We were always there, right? It might have, and now it's something else. It's completely different.
The hub.
But so there was like you need to keep your foot in that door so it stays open, right? I feel that right now there's a difference, because now it's like, no, I'm entitled to this. I shouldn't, like you don't look back. You don't look back at who gave you anything. You just, because your people have been oppressed, you all of a sudden you need to be at a certain spot, which is fine. But I think at that point, like, there was you're already shutting out this energy, because that energy will stifle. Those folks will not leave it open. Like I said, I think that's what's happening right now. Like folks are not looking back at, there's no responsibility. Like when I was looking at working at land pads and whatnot, a lot of that is actually what I brought into the organizations. Like we need to leave this for future generations. I want my kids to actually enjoy a lot of what we enjoyed or whatnot, what we have.
Well, and I think like part of like the giving back, it like I would, it might still exist now, but it might exist like it's within the nuclear family. My folks worked hard to get me here. I'm gonna make sure they have what they need, which is great. It's okay. But I think there was, in my thinking, like a more conceptual idea of like giving back. It's like it's collective. There's like there's a we have to we have a whole class of folks that we want to bring up with us.
When we started the first youth conference with Mitch at the Jason, when we brought it back, we went up to Mexican restaurant, and we asked them, like, we need food for these kids. If we give you all the stuff, could you make these burritos for them? It's El Tapatío, I think it's called, right now next to Safeway in Runner Park. And the guy turned around and he's like, let me ask you something. He's like, why do you do this? He's like, why do you do this? Why do you waste your time? And for us, it was like a big old slap in the face. Because he's like, I have invested, I have a bank account for my kids. Well, great for you. But there's other kids that don't have that and whatnot. And so definitely, and it was a group of us. That group never went there again. But I think that speaks to kind of like that mentality. There was like that clash that I know somehow it's like reverberating again. Somehow I just feel it up in the air. Maybe it's just me, maybe just getting old, but I think I know we had a commitment. Like there was this commitment, and I think it's ingrained in the Chicano philosophy, right? That folks from the 1960s actually did something. They laid down blood and tears for you to have what you have now, and you recognize that. I don't think right now it's like the recognizing piece is there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's like we were kind of part of an ideology. Like there was shit written. There was poets. There was fucking writings. There was plan das land. There was like shit that was like actually guiding some form of worldview for folks like us, especially if we were in realms of higher education. It was like, oh shit.
And the things we were talking about was crazy. It was at a Mecha statewide or a national conference where I learned what LGBTQ was. I mean, back in the days of LGBT, and then we had a whole workshop on why we should add LGBTQ, right? And so that was my first exposure to it. It's like, oh, okay. And so now, like, all of a sudden you start hearing this criticism of Chicanos being, because you don't say, because you don't say Latinx, all of a sudden you're anti-queer or whatnot, and so it's a lot of, I think I owe a lot of how I think, how I carry myself out, like a danza, what they say, it's like, you try to dance as you would carry yourself out, That's how we did in Mecha. It's like you fought for what you believed in, because that you're going to benefit from it, and that's what that's I mean, yeah. Anyway, so I think we were exposed to a lot of things, a lot of things that now we see it, and it's like sometimes we take for granted. It's like sometimes even challenge that what we're not at a certain point. When we've been kind of exposed to it for a long time, we've seen it evolve, and sometimes we've seen concepts evolve and then go back, and whatnot.
Yeah.
But
And like you came out of the mid '90s where Pete Wilson's doing some of the most racist stuff in the country at the point. California is like one of enacting some of the most controversial racist anti-immigrant laws. But there's a whole generation of people that end up coming up, and all of a sudden, California, 10 years later, is like giving driver's licenses to undocumented people. It's like that shift came from struggle. Now, people might not remember how we got to the point of like this being a more immigrant-friendly state to some extent. But it's generational. And sometimes when you win, if you don't nurture the victory, people forget how you won, and then it just
Right.
yeah.
so.
Well, I wanted to take it back to Watsonville, because you mentioned it already in one that you went out there, and I know that was also a part of your process of going out there. And I remember when you were teaching me a lot when I was going into doing the restorative justice program, and developing that accountability circles. You would tell me a lot about Watsonville and some of the stuff that was going on over there, and the example of how Chicanos took over a city council and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I took off to Monterey County chasing fortune and glory, but it didn't happen. When not somehow I ended up in Santa Cruz County, in Watsonville, teaching at Escuela Quetzal. There's always Quetzales. Now it's like Quetzales at CCLA and whatnot. But there's always Quetzales everywhere. But I applied for this position, which I didn't necessarily. I was like, I'm gonna bomb it, But a friend of mine, Danzante, kind of said, hey, you should apply for this position. I was thinking of coming back home, getting to the teaching credential program again, and then I applied and I got it. And I kind of like being kind of away from home, but not too away. I could come back, on the weekend which I did for a long time. But I ended up working there for like almost 4 years, I think. And it was a really interesting position because it was a clean and sober high school. We had and Maria. Well, anyway, I was gonna out it right now, but so there's a former student. There's a student that's a leader in the community. The community now. That was a student which I didn't know was there. So I think that's where I got a lot of the just the counseling component. A lot of things that I still used in land pass and whatnot, organizing families and whatnot, because I would lead these work parent groups, and then youth groups, and doing counseling, substance abuse counseling and whatnot. But also I was like involved in the community there. Now I tried to kind of stay away a lot from the because a lot of the brown berets in Watsonville, Tomas Alejo and all them, and Alejo family and Ramiro, and there was a lot of these folks that I kind of would see in the community, but it wasn't my community. Like I didn't really too part of it. But I would just go in support. I learned a lot, just by watching them kind of go out there and really like pushing really tough issues, really controversial issues, pushing them to the forefront. And the Peace and Justice March, I think it was called. Or I can't remember. There was like 2 main events that they had, and they had them like right. They had like these marches and for just against violence and police brutality. I mean, they were doing a lot. So I got a lot from them, and but also I was doing a lot of danza. I was doing danza everywhere. And so I was going to like almost every day I would dance sometimes. But so they kind of both came together, and I mean, I think I can't remember. I don't recall any big thing that we did. I have to think really hard, but I mean, that's in essence how I ended up doing a lot of the counseling. Was just got
Right.
through Escuela Quetzal.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Then you,
I mean, I think the other thing is like I started doing a lot more, kind of like the whole on the spiritual side.
Mm.
Started getting a lot into different type of ceremonies that were not being out there.
yeah.
So just yeah. So I got exposed to a lot of these other characters out there. That.
And are you working with Chente at this point?
Yeah. So I met Chente. He was working with students who were on probation.
Mm.
So I had seen him in danza.
Mm-hmm.
I had met him. So he had been dancing for quite a while.
Mhm.
So he somehow I was like, he came in and started using some computer, and then it was like, and then so he saw my feathers and like started kind of just chopping it up, and then sure enough, like he started like, well, man, you gotta kind of up your game in terms of like trajes and whatnot. So he taught me how to do all kinds of stuff, and
Nice.
so yeah, so there was like from trajes to beadwork to songs, native,
Nice.
and just exposure to different communities, native communities. I
He's
think-
bringing you into ceremonies
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah. So I think, so I think that's where definitely, I acquired a lot of that. To a point where like, I felt, I could easily walk on my own through some of these different communities, native communities, from here to Nevada and whatnot. And so, but it was, I was hanging out with Chenta. Like he actually came over here, stayed up here for quite a while. So we've been kind of, chopping it up pretty. I mean, since then.
Yeah, totally. Cool. What's your timeline?
I'm getting kind of tired.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can call it. Let's well, there's more. I think we got to do another one.
Part 2.
Yeah, part 2. But are we still recording?
We are.
So okay, yeah. Let's call it here. And this is a good background. I think we're just understanding how culture and politica have kind of grown in Sonoma County, using you as a good vessel. And then again, like I'm here doing this work in part as that same lineage, So just a lot of gratitude.
I mean, it's good to see 'cause I was thinking, I saw your, some of the notes, and like I can think of like there's a bunch of mini course students that are now like principals and
Yeah.
that I had as my students.
Yeah.
I mean, I think with you is more like there was from the Great Day Labor Center, it was more like a colleague, and I know that there was even in Mecha where
sorry.
like
Talk.
Sorry. Bueno.
so
Yeah,
but
turned it off.
anyway, so that and
No, no estoy en la casa.
but watch out with all the poop, dude. Sunday hasn't come out, but yeah, like
Uh-huh.
a ton of students, dude. I'm like, all of a sudden, like, what the hell are you doing? Oh, I'm not a teacher anymore. I'm a freaking principal.
No,
Like,
exactly.
okay.
No, people doing that. People are, yeah,
Okay.
professors, counselors, politicians, todo. All right, cool. We're gonna sign off.
Wow.
So I got audio here too, but it's not that good. Peace. Check this guy out.
Yeah.
All right,
Ah,
cool.
ahorita
Thanks.
estoy-